Hey, you're back with the Get Out of Debt Guy podcast. I'm Steve Rode, the old Get Out of Debt Guy, and with me is Damon Day, the new Get Out Debt Guy. Damon, say hi.
Hi.
All right. Damon is feeling very energetic today. We're going to, first off, I think, Damon, you have a question that you received through your website. If you have questions for Damon, you can always reach him at Damon Day, DamonDay.com. Damon, you thought this one was important. Lay it on us.
Yeah, it was a gentleman filled out the help request on my site. He's got some questions about his debt.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was a good topic for a podcast because
Okay.
if he's got this question, I'm sure a lot of people have this question.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just read it to you.
Okay.
It says, you say that bankruptcy is not a bad option or a big deal, but I would disagree.
Okay.
If I declare, which I've already done once, then it'll take 20 years for me to get out. If you want to stay at a hotel, you need a credit card. I'm on the financial brink again, and I'd like you to explain to people and to me what your life is like while you're bankrupt.
Oh,
If
good
I
question.
need a car, not 3
Yeah.
years from now, but now, please explain how I do that if I have no credit and a bankruptcy.
Excellent question. I really like this one. So, what was the guy's? We don't know. We're not saying his name, right?
No, I'm not gonna say his name because he asked
Okay.
me in confidence, but I felt like it was be better served to say, answer the question on the podcast so other people can learn from it because it is a very valid question, and
Okay.
it's a big reason that a lot of people shy away from bankruptcy and don't even look at it because they think they've been told that your life is going to be over for a
Yeah.
while,
Well, that's
and
what I would like to call not right.
yeah.
Incorrect. I was trying to think of a politically
Well,
sensitive way to say that.
and also, I want to clarify that we never said it's not a big deal.
No.
You and I always say, look at all the options. We're not out here trumpeting bankruptcy as everybody needs to file bankruptcy. Everybody needs to look at their own individual circumstance and situation, weigh all of the option, both the pros and the cons, and then make
Right.
a decision based on that. That's what we advocate. We tend to talk about bankruptcy a lot because bankruptcy is the one option that's gotten such a bad rap out there.
And I think it's got a bad rap, not because of reality, but because of two things. One is the number of personal finance people out there pushing it as being horrible and bad so they can sell their shit.
Yeah.
And the second is people making assumptions and just repeating the same stuff without looking into it. Because you and I, this is no secret, I went bankrupt in 1990. And within 3 years, I had purchased a new house. We had money for a down payment. I had
Wait. No, you
what?
mean 20 years. It took you 20 years to buy a house, right?
No, no, that is
Like
what
20 years, I was on my fifth house in 20 years.
Yeah, no, actually, um,
Yeah, how many houses were you into 20 years?
probably 3 or 4, and I had moved overseas.
Yeah.
So
Wait, they didn't stop you at customs because you had a bankruptcy?
nope.
Are you
Uh,
sure? They should have went,
I'm
Steve,
actually positive.
Steve
And by the
Road?
yeah, checking them. No, you got to go back.
Yeah,
No,
you can't come in.
and even all those years ago, by the 3 years, we bought the house, and by that time, my credit was, great.
Yeah.
And now you have even the best story, I think, because after your bankruptcy, wasn't it the day that you got your discharge papers?
So I filed in the end of 2011.
Mm-hmm.
I got my discharge in February of 2012. So it's like 12 years ago, actually, now. But yes, the day I opened the mailbox, got the papers, hey, all the debt's gone, couple $100,000, get a fresh start.
Mm-hmm.
I got not an offer because I already received the offer before. And I applied. I was like, oh, hell, why not? I applied.
Yeah.
But after I filed the bankruptcy, Capital One got a hold of that information and was like, ooh, this guy filed bankruptcy. Let's offer him a new credit card. And so, yeah, I get the offer. Oh, this is our fresh start program. So they were clear in the letter. Like, we know you filed bankruptcy. Everybody deserves a second chance, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Here's our fresh start program. It was like no interest for, it's a starter card, it's $1,000 credit limit, but it was like, no interest for the first 12 months, $1,000 limit. if you pay on time for the first 6 months, we'll raise your limit. Like basically the
Mhm.
whole spiel was, we want to help you rebuild your credit because we know you're
Mhm.
starting over. And it just so happened to be a coincidence that the day I got my bankruptcy discharge in the mail, the exact same day, also in the mailbox,
Yeah.
was the brand new Capital One credit card. It didn't even take 24 hours to get the next one.
Well, I don't wanna repeat, both of our stories again for the umpteenth time, but both of us didn't file bankruptcy, just, as a lark. We both did it because found ourselves in impossible situations, and just there were no other alternatives. It always drives me crazy when people say, "I want to avoid bankruptcy for whatever emotional thing," without considering, okay, what you're doing, and if you want to do this willingly, have at it. But what you're saying is the reason you want to avoid bankruptcy is because of fear, and you don't give a damn about retiring with any money, or being able to save, or being able to live safely, or being able to make ends meet, or have a safety net and all that. If that's what you want to do, man, hey, you do you, boo. I don't
Yeah.
have any problem with it.
So, so I mean, I had alternatives, right? I just chose they were just a lot more expensive, so I
Hmm.
chose not to pursue them. And
Yeah.
ultimately, I didn't want to file bankruptcy, right? Because you remember when we were talking when I was going through it. I mean, Steve and I have known each other for what year did we meet? Like 2009,
Something like that.
2008. Okay, so Steve knew me when I was going through it, and my whole beef was what? Like, I'm a financial consultant. I
Right.
can't file bankruptcy. How would that look? I know how I can get
Yeah.
myself out of this, and I could, but it was a couple $100,000. So
Yeah. And
eventually,
what
and
was
I'm not.
my role? What was my role in this?
Your role was to be my consultant, and you. I think you kept saying, if you were your own client, what would you
Yeah.
advise you to do? And I'm like, shut up, Steve. It's not about that. It's not about what I should do. It's about what I want to do. Damn it! And I don't want to file.
Let
I
me
remember
find
that.
that wand.
Yeah, don't use me on me, damn it. What would you do? What'd you tell your client if your client was in your situation?
Well,
Shut
I
up.
tell them to file bankruptcy.
So but yeah, so and the funny thing is I'm a very different consultant than I was pre BK
Hmm.
than I was post BK, because when I did go through it, now it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Don't get us wrong. We're not gonna be like, you're gonna
No.
skip to my loo on the way into the courthouse and then go celebrate. It's not like that, but there are situations where getting that stress just removed from your life and allow you to do better moving forward, as Steve likes to say,
Yeah.
can be tremendous. And in my experience, it was. Once I finally just got it done and made the decision to do it, and I realized that wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was. And as far as how did it affect my ability to help people and be a financial consultant, my business took off
Well,
after
now
the
you
bankruptcy.
understood. You understood better.
Yeah, and it did change the way the advice that I gave, because that was a situation that I went through personally, and I realized that I was even victim before that of parroting
Hmm.
the, oh, bankruptcy is always the last resort. It's going to be bad, and you should never do it unless you have to. I realized, like, wait a minute, this is actually a good thing moving forward, and it helped me a lot. People should at least consider this more before they just jump into something else. So that's for Steve and I. That's always been our main. In fact, you go find videos from us 12
Yeah,
years ago.
going back years. Yeah.
We'll be saying the same thing. And we're not saying everybody should just file bankruptcy. We're saying
No.
everybody should consider all the options, and
Right.
bankruptcy is one of them. So
Right.
back to the gentleman's question, because he had some specific questions. Again, we don't say bankruptcy is not a big deal. It's just you also have to look at comparing apples to apples.
Hmm.
So if you're looking at bankruptcy, well, what's the alternative in your situation for the bankruptcy? Because you can't compare bankruptcy to, well, if I had my life and an 850 credit score and I made plenty of money and I could get any loans for any car, anything I wanted, or I filed bankruptcy. So show me the
Right.
difference there. It's like, wait a minute, that's not the scenario you're in. The scenario you're in is you obviously have a lot of debt. You're overextended. I don't know the specifics, but if you're even considering filing bankruptcy again, you're probably upside down. Probably your cash flow is negative or close to it. You probably already don't have a good credit score because you're maxed out on all your debts and maybe even got some late payments.
Hmm.
So we're not comparing bankruptcy to what your life would look like if you had an 850 credit score
No.
and plenty of money coming in. we're comparing bankruptcy to your life right now. So the question is, if I need a car,
Yeah.
not 3 years from now, but if I need a car right now, explain to me how I would do it if I had a bankruptcy.
I could tell you exactly. So my car, after I filed bankruptcy, I didn't turn a car in, but when I needed a car, um, I bought a $500 used postal Jeep. They were selling them at the local post office.
If you're
And
trying to
I just,
sell them on bankruptcy, it's not working,
well,
Steve.
no, I mean, my point is,
Everybody's going,
I
I don't want to use postal Jeep.
well, I mean, hold on. Look, you you don't life is not about what you want all the time.
I got
I
you.
needed a ride. I bought a beater car because I knew I just needed to continue to rebuild my credit. After my bankruptcy, I got that secured card. I wanted to rebuild my credit and I needed something in the interim.
Yeah.
Hey, all of us, I think, have had to make those kinds of sacrifices, not what I want, but what I need. And what I needed most was needed to recover from the bankruptcy, be able to get my family into a place where they could live instead of living at my parents' house with my wife and my 3-year-old daughter because, I'd been through that terrible crisis. And then just get myself on my feet. The funny thing is that when I did buy a car after that, um, the new car dealers were more than willing to extend credit to me through manufacturer financing deals. That was not a problem.
Well, and that was, you were in the 1990s, early
Yeah,
1990s. But by the
yeah.
time, when I filed in 2012, bankruptcy was almost starting to become a fad, especially it's right after the crisis. I
The
mean, that's what
crash.
set
Yeah,
me into it. And
yeah.
so my experience after was even easier than yours because it was like, oh, bankruptcy? Oh, that old thing? That was 2 years ago. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
But, and your point is very valid. Like, you do what you got to do. If you're not paying all this debt, you save up some cash and you go buy a beater. But my first question to somebody that asked me that would be, that's a great question. How are you going to buy a car today, right now, before you file bankruptcy?
Hmm.
And they're going to say, oh, I can't. Well, why
Hmm.
not? Well, I don't have the credit. So is it the bankruptcy that's removing your ability to buy the car?
Yeah.
Or is it your current situation? You
Right.
can't blame bankruptcy because so if you can't buy a car now, you can't say, well, if I file bankruptcy, I won't be able to buy a car now.
Right. Because you can't now.
You already can't buy a car now. So
Right.
now, if you can buy a car now, then maybe we discuss, well, what do you currently drive? Oh, I'm driving this 10-year-old beater. It's repair of the month club. I rely on it for work and it's just going to crap out on me at any moment. I need to buy a new car, but I can't buy a new car if I file bankruptcy. Well, if you can buy a new car before you file bankruptcy,
Buy the new
that
car.
might make sense.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
And when we
situations where it might make sense to go get yourself a new car and then file bankruptcy. You're not going
yeah,
bankrupt on the
and
car.
right, exactly. You're going to continue to make those payments. You're
Yeah.
going to keep the car.
Yeah. But you got to compare apples to apples. Like, I know you might not want to file bankruptcy, but you can't project your current situation and be like, well, it's on bankruptcy. I don't want to buy a car in 3 years. I want to buy a car right now. Okay, then buy a car right now. Simple. And if you
Yeah.
say, I can't buy a car right now, well, then that's not an argument against bankruptcy, right?
Well, my used postal Jeep example, uh, I had learned after my financial downfall that I no longer cared what people thought about me or what the projection was that I was putting forth. My used postal Jeep
That
carried
shirt,
my.
that shirt is screaming that loud and clear, bro.
Oh, I know. My used postal Jeep carried me to work just as a brand new Lexus would have. I got my ass to work. I worked. I got my paycheck.
Wait,
You know.
did you have doors on that thing?
uh, I had to drive on the wrong side, and it had sliding doors that didn't close all the way. So in the wintertime, it was cold.
Wait,
It
was
was
this in England or was this in
no.
Maryland?
This is Maryland. Yeah,
Why were you driving on the? Oh,
the
because the
postal Jeep.
postal Jeep. Now
Yeah,
it didn't put that together. So I'm like, wait a minute, did he buy the Jeep in England?
no.
I forgot the mailmen have the steering on that side so they can drive up and boop boop boop.
Yep,
I gotcha. I
yep.
gotcha.
And the next car that I got after that, the postal Jeep was 500. The next car I bought was 1,000. I bought a used Honda Civic, and
Dave Ramsey would be proud.
I just needed to buy a vehicle that I could pay cash for, and
Yeah,
that was it.
you tiny feeted your way into it,
I
built it
did.
up.
I did. So
And now you got 2 Model Ys.
I do.
Hey, did the bankruptcy affect you when you bought the Model Ys?
Oh no, nobody even asked.
I'm joking.
Um,
That was
the
30 years ago.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember maybe the first financing thing that I did after the bankruptcy that had to do with transportation was probably a motorcycle. And they showed me the application and it said, have you filed bankruptcy in the last 7 or 10 years or something? And I asked the financing person, well, here's my situation. And she goes, just check the box. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. And when I filed my bankruptcy, we already had 2 cars that were still new. In fact, we're still making payments on them.
Hmm.
So we just kept those cars. So,
Yeah.
and then when I went to buy my first car post bankruptcy, I believe that was the Escalade. Yeah, it was a platinum Escalade. Like
Yeah.
Steve, Steve does the responsible thing and buys a a postal Jeep that the doors don't close, and I'm like, I want to get a platinum Escalade. Oh, 5 TVs. Oh, all right. So I'm trying to think. This was a 2014 Escalade,
Yeah.
and um, and I think I bought it in 2015. So it was about 3 years after. And I did have an issue. I was banking with Chase.
Hmm.
I went in and Chase said, hey, and I made plenty. I banked with Chase. I made plenty of money. Clearly could afford this car, no problem.
Yep.
And I was about 3 years post bankruptcy. I go in and want to get a loan for this car. And it pulled my credit, and my credit was in the 700s, like 750 at this point. Like
Hmm.
3 years later, the bankruptcy is still on the credit, but my score was 750. That's what
Yeah.
people don't realize, because this guy made a comment about it's going to take me 20 years to get out. I don't even understand that comment. No, it won't.
No.
I mean, he said he filed bankruptcy before, so I know he's speaking from some experience, so I'm not sure what that's coming from.
Mm.
But I'm
Well,
not even 20 years.
I'll tell you what I think it is after you finish your story.
Okay,
I
so let
think
me
I
finish
know
my
what it is.
story, because I'm only 12 years post bankruptcy, but
Yeah.
nobody knows except for the fact I have it on my front page of my website that I filed bankruptcy. But so I go into Chase, sit with the banker, and they say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we have a policy. We don't give out car loans to anybody that's had a bankruptcy in the last 5 years."
Okay.
And I said, "Oh, okay, well, I make plenty of money. You can auto deduct it from my account whenever
Hmm.
you want. My credit score is good. You're saying there's no matter what, you won't give me this loan, even though I've been banking with you guys for like 10 years now."
Hmm.
"That's correct. I'm sorry. We have a policy." Okay.
Okay.
Close my account, stop giving them the tens of thousands of dollars a month they were getting.
Yeah.
Went to the bank down the street, said, "Hey, will you give me a loan for this Escalade
Oh,
for
sure.
my stuff?" "Absolutely. No problem. How's 3% interest?" "Great. Let's do it." Flew out to Oklahoma, bought the Escalade, drove it back home.
Yep.
So was there a little wrinkle? Yeah, it wasn't perfect. I had to go to another bank to get the loan. So I'm not saying you could just file bankruptcy and everything's going to be fine. You might have to get a little creative. And the way I got creative was I said, "You know what, Chase, I don't like your
Yeah.
policy. I'm going to go do business with this local credit union because they like
Right.
my money.
Right.
So see you,
That was
Chase."
not a problem. Well, here's why I think he's saying 20 years, because he filed bankruptcy previously. And this is one of those misperceptions that people get in their brain, that somehow you need to avoid credit for 10 years, right? It's going to ruin you for 10 years. So people avoid it. The problem when you do
Well, because
that
they listen to
is
Dave Ramsey.
that's true. But the problem when you avoid it is you're perpetuating your bad credit. Because I have a friend whose mom just pulled her credit report, and she's been one of these, I want to avoid credit at all costs and everything else. I want to, be responsible in personal finance. I get that. Two different things to think about right there. But she has no credit. So
Mhm.
she has, I mean, that's worse than bad credit.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. If you want to avoid credit because you want to feel like you're behaving responsibly with your personal finances, that's one thing. But if you want to have good credit, you gotta you gotta play to win. I mean, you don't have to run up debt you can't manage, but you
Yeah.
have to have credit, good credit that is reported to build your credit score. You can't create a score unless you have something to score.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the system, right? You can fight the system if you want. And
Right.
I know we pick on Dave Ramsey. A lot of it is kidding, because he does have a lot of good stuff. I like Dave Ramsey. I think he's a smart guy. He's a really smart businessman. And Dave Ramsey himself filed bankruptcy, and
Yeah.
he's doing okay, I think, right?
Yeah. Right.
But
Doing
I
great.
watched a clip of him the other day, and he was telling a joke. He was on stage or something. It was on TikTok or Facebook or something, and he was telling the story about exactly what you were talking about having no credit, because Dave Ramsey obviously is 100% no credit.
Hmm.
He said exception of the mortgage, but everything else cash, 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 cash. And by the way, that's easier when you're like a multi-millionaire. It's easy
Yeah.
to do that. But so he makes this joke, and he's like, the credit system. He's talking about how stupid the system is, and I agree with him on that. It's really stupid. You got this number, and if you have, he goes, I've got no credit because I don't use credit. He goes, I could go down to an apartment complex down the street, and I would not qualify to rent an apartment, but I could take out my checkbook and buy the whole complex.
Right.
That's how
Exactly.
stupid this is. And it's like, yeah, it's a good point, but it also makes the point like you could take out your checkbook and buy the whole complex. For people that can't do that, credit might make life a little bit easier,
Right.
you know? But
Well,
that's just me.
the good credit has lots of advantages. So, uh,
Absolutely.
lowers insurance rates and all that other stuff. Um, so, if you do end up filing bankruptcy, the thing to do is not hide in a hole for 10 years. The thing to do is the very same thing that Damon did, which is make a focused effort on rebuilding your
Yeah.
credit as quickly as possible. A couple of secured cards, that report to the credit
And my
bureaus.
Capital One wasn't even a secured card.
Yeah.
But I did get a couple of secured cards. Capital One's actually traditionally really easy to get. I don't know if recently they've changed, but I still have the Capital One cards that I got in 2012.
Hmm.
Right after I still have them now. um, but Capital One was the easiest for me to get. So post bankruptcy, I would go ahead and apply for a Capital One and see. But this goes also to his other question.
Yeah.
If I want to stay in a hotel, you need a
Yeah.
credit card.
Well, that
No
is
problem.
that is true because
True most of the time. Sometimes they'll let
most
you
of the
do it
time,
with a debit with a deposit,
yeah,
but life is easier with a credit card.
yeah,
Therefore, you go, like Steve said, go get a secured card. Even with the bankruptcy, you can get a secured card.
yeah. I
You
mean, a
got to,
secured card, you put down $500 and you get a $500 credit limit, and you could use that to stay maybe one night at a hotel, depending on if it's Motel 6 or not. But here's the ultimate irony, which is you're not going to be able to accumulate money to save, safety net, retirement, put down for a secured card or anything else unless you file bankruptcy, right? You file bankruptcy, it eliminates all those bills. In those months right after you file bankruptcy is going to be your biggest saving opportunity.
yeah, because you're not like when he's talking about what's your life going to be like when you're bankrupt. Yeah, he already filed bankruptcy, so he should have some idea of it. But it's probably not going to be any worse. In fact, it's going to be better than your life probably
Yeah,
is
it
right
is.
now
It
when you're in a
is.
situation where you need to file bankruptcy, because now you got all these bills coming in, you have to pay them, and your credit sucks. So
Yeah,
you've already got the negatives of the bankruptcy right now without any of the benefits, which is the debt will be gone and you can save your money. So right before bankruptcy is actually usually way worse than right after bankruptcy, because at
right,
least now the
exactly.
debt and the obligations are gone. Then you can save up some cash, and then instead of always thinking about I have to have credit, I have to have credit, I have to have credit. Yeah, you can rebuild your credit, but you can also survive without credit for
Right,
a year or two by
right.
saving that cash. I know it's hard to think about right now when you're like out of cash every month, but a lot of that is probably because you're shelling out $2,000-3,000 a month on bills that will go away.
Well, here are
So
a couple other things that always catch people by surprise, which is bankruptcy is a right that is enshrined in the US Constitution. Our founding fathers knew the importance of bankruptcy, of giving people the ability to get a fresh start when they found themselves in a bad situation. And so it's there for you. The other thing is that bankruptcy is actually biblical. No matter what kind of crap someone wants to push on you, it is in the Bible that it talks about forgiving debts of others, or the Jubilee, forgiving all debts after 7 years, or whatever it is. Y- Uh, get the facts. Talk to Damon.
and when
Uh,
does the Chapter 7 bankruptcy fall off your credit?
Happens to be, well, that's actually 10 years, but 13 falls off in
Oh, the
7.
13, I mean, 13, yeah.
Yeah, falls off in
7
7.
years.
Yeah. And here's the funny thing
Oh, you know what
about
I meant to say?
hmm?
Not falls off your credit. When can you file again? If you file
Yeah,
a Chapter 7, when can you file again? That's what
yeah.
I meant.
But here's the funny
7
thing.
years.
So people find themselves in a difficult position, and if they're considering bankruptcy, I want to repay my creditors what I can, and they do a Chapter 13, where you're making monthly payments.
Mhm.
Uh, the majority, the vast majority, the overwhelming majority of Chapter 13 bankruptcies fail
Yeah,
because people have not gotten themselves out of the hole. And so they wind up not making the payments and converting into to a Chapter 7 where your debts are completely eliminated in 90 or 120 days. Here's another thing I've heard too is I need to repay my creditors. I have a moral responsibility to do that. Um, so I've decided I'm going to settle my debt. Uh, okay, I understand your position, what you're saying about how you feel about your responsibility. But if you're going to, not repay 80% of your debt and you're going to repay 20% of your debt, you're actually not repaying your debt. So
that's true.
you're doing some mental gymnastics there to make you come to a conclusion that's not based in reality.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Every situation is different, right?
Yeah,
So again, Steve and I aren't sitting here jumping up and down going, everybody should file bankruptcy. It's all great and fine.
right.
We're just saying it's an option. Sometimes, and I have clients a lot where we look at it and we go, oh, we can't do that. It doesn't make sense. Then you might lose your house based on this situation, or you end up having to sell a car. But sometimes the amount of money you would save in filing a Chapter 7, if the only downside is one of your cars has to go away,
Hmm.
that might be a good trade-off, or it might not. So the important thing is, don't make assumptions about settlement. Don't make assumptions about bankruptcy or credit counseling or anything like that. This is a plug, but just talk to me. I can walk
Yeah.
you through the stuff. I've been doing it for 20 some odd years. And we can look at your specific situation and we can go through and say, here's how a bankruptcy would affect you if you decided to file, whether it's a 7 or a 13. Here's how a settlement strategy might look and how much it's probably going to cost you to do that if you wanted to avoid the bankruptcy and try to, earn your way out of it and resolve it,
Hmm.
that way. Here's what a credit counseling type strategy would look like and how much that would cost. And here's how much a good old fashioned Dave Ramsey type debt snowball kind
Hmm.
of a strategy. And you could just lay all that out and decide
Yeah.
what you want to pay, because the reality is any strategy that we look at, if you're dealing with debt, it's going to involve sacrifice. No matter what we do, there's going to be sacrifice. You have to decide if you want it to be more of a
Hmm.
lifestyle sacrifice or a credit score sacrifice or somewhere in the middle.
All right.
But there's going to be a sacrifice. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in debt if you didn't have to sacrifice, right? Oh, and one last point I was going to make. One thing that I did that I thought was pretty clever back in the day,
What?
when I first filed bankruptcy to rebuild my credit, I went into a credit union and I asked for a $1,000 loan.
Yeah.
I put $1,000 down deposit. I said, I want to get a secured loan against that.
Hmm.
They said, okay, no problem. Interest rate was 6%, 7%, whatever. So I went in with $1,000, deposited that, got a loan. So they gave me, I walked out with basically another check.
Hmm.
Went to a credit union down the street, did the same thing, took that loan I just got, put that as the $1,000 deposit security, got another check, went to a third one. So
Yeah.
now what I did was I set up three different loans at three
That all
different
reported to the
credit
credit
unions that
bureaus.
all report to all the three bureaus that he got $1,000 loan. This was when I had bad credit, fresh bankruptcy, but the banks weren't risking anything.
Right.
But I took $1,000 of my money and turned that into three
Right.
all secured loans, but I didn't use $3,000 to do it. I only used 1,000
Right.
and just piggybacked each loan down to the next one. And yeah, so I started rebuilding my credit right away with those three loans from those three credit unions. Now I had to make the payments, obviously, but I could afford to make the payments because I didn't have a couple $100,000 of debt
Right.
that I just
Exactly.
wiped out with bankruptcy. So it did cost me a little bit of interest, like
Yeah.
7% or whatever that was. But at the end, when it was all done and those loans were repaid, I essentially had three checking accounts with $1,000 in them. So I had
Yeah.
$3,000 at the end of it. Again, it
Right.
did cost me some interest to do it, but all three of those accounts reported on my credit bureau, start rebuilding positive history.
Well, is there anything else you would like to add? We could probably talk about this for actually 6 months.
Yeah, no, I think we covered all his questions. I'm not going to mention his. We'll call him X.
Heck,
You know,
no,
you know.
I'm going to
So
call him Simon.
Simon. Simon's not his name, but hey, I really appreciate the question. I feel like he's a listener to the podcast because he made the comment about you
Good.
say. So
Yeah.
obviously he must have heard on the podcast. So I felt this was
Excellent.
a good way to address it, so we could actually get into a lot more detail,
Yeah.
and then anybody else listening could benefit from that, because I know a lot of people feel the same way, that
Absolutely.
bankruptcy is the big bad scary thing. In fact, I just talked to some clients last night where I feel strongly that bankruptcy makes the most sense, and I think they do too, but they really don't want to go that route. But I
That's
think
fine.
we're starting to peel back the
Right.
layers a bit, and I think they're coming to the realization that it's going to make more sense. But again, at the end of the day, my job for my clients is not to push something on you, or get you to agree with me.
Right.
My job is
Right.
to explain everything and walk you through the strategies and the scenarios, and tell you specifically how your life would look over the next few years, depending on which route you wanted to go. But ultimately, it's your credit, it's your money, it's your life. So it's your decision. My job is just to make sure you have all the facts and information so you can make the best decision for you and your family.
The biggest tragedy are those folks who are paralyzed and don't do anything, and they limp along for 5 years, and they've lost that 5 years of time they could have been rebuilding and doing better moving forward. And then, finally hit the wall so hard they've got to do something.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, I think we covered it. I think we answered that question. I think we did good. Thank you, as Steve calls you, Simon.
Simon. So
Simon.
Damon, people want to get in touch with you, Damon Day, DamonDay.com. You can find him there and talk to him. Until next time, Damon, see ya.
Peace.